Hello, Freejord. I really appreciate you watching and commenting. Now, let's listen to the story.
The Wilson family's annual reunion was just as stuffy as I remembered. The air, thick with expensive perfume and hidden ambitions, burned my lungs. The crystal chandeliers of my aunt's mansion cast a cold, smile-like reflection on the walls, reflected in diamonds, watches, and pompous glances. I stood in the corner in my simple black armor-like dress and watched this familiar spectacle. My cousins, like gladiators in the arena, hurled the spears of their achievements, vying for the patriarch's favor. "Olivia," Aunt Patricia's voice cut through the din like a blade. "I almost didn't notice you. Still working as a secretary, dear?" I sipped my champagne, feeling the coolness of the glass hold my sardonic smile in place. An administrative assistant, actually. Ah, her perfectly contoured eyebrows shot up to the vaulted ceiling she considered her own. Still at that little consulting firm? What was it called? Summit Solutions, I breathed out, forcing apathy into my voice. My cousin Ethan, a newly minted partner in my father's firm, couldn't resist. "Come on, Olive, I could get you a real job, with prospects." His tone was sweet as syrup and just as sticky and condescending. Somewhere in my bag lay my phone, where digital contracts worth millions awaited signature. I wasn't thinking about them, but about that office above the Chinese restaurant, the smell of noodles and the despair mingling with my determination. I'm happy where I am. Thank you. Happy? Aunt Patricia's laughter rang like broken crystal. "Darling, you're burying your potential. Your cousins are executives, partners, and you're shuffling papers for someone else." My heart pounded against my ribs with a quiet, furious victory. If only they knew. That someone else was me, and it all started right here, 10 years ago, under those same disapproving gazes. Then, with my MBA and shining eyes, I pitched them my idea, a plan to save companies. Instead of support, I received condescending smirks. "Consulting?" Uncle Robert snorted. "Leave that to the men, girl. Start in the mailroom." Their world was ironclad, cramped, and cruel. A woman's success was measured by a successful marriage, not by a signature on a contract. That night, swallowing tears of rage, I made a vow to myself. I would build it all myself, and I would make them feel sorry for me. Summit Solutions was born in poverty and fanatical faith. My first client was a doomed manufacturing plant that everyone had abandoned. I became their phantom savior, working around the clock, delving into every detail. When they turned a profit 6 months later, I didn't cry with joy. I simply allowed myself one glass of cheap wine in complete silence. It was the first victory in a long, secret war. I grew up in the shadows, intentionally. The people I hired became an invisible family. My name was erased from documents, my face from the public eye. To the world, I remained Olivia Wilson, a humble clerk. To the growing empire, I was the nameless CEO, a phantom working miracles. And all this time, I watched as the sharks of my family bought up sinking businesses. My company became their invisible nightmare. We snatched the prey from under their noses, bringing them back to life before they became easy prey. This was my revenge. Quiet, graceful, and merciless. "More champagne, dear?" Auntie's voice brought me back to the hated living room. "Although, perhaps you'd like some water? The salary, I suppose, is modest." I took the glass, my fingers trembling slightly, not from resentment, but from a wild, animalistic desire to shout the truth. "Thank you. And how are things with Uncle's new purchase, Williams Manufacturing?" A shadow flickered across her face. "Complexities, but Robert can handle it." Complexities. That was my salvation plan. The company Uncle had already considered his own was now flourishing under my leadership. His takeover attempt was failing, and Summit Solutions' fee for the operation was so high that Ethan wouldn't earn it in a decade. "I heard they hired some firm," Ethan snorted. "Summit something. The CEO won't even show his face. He's probably some loser, ashamed of his failure." At that moment, my phone vibrated in my clutch. A message from a real assistant, not the ghost I was pretending to be. The words blazed on the screen. Urgent meeting tomorrow, 9 a.m. Wilson Ventures requests discussions regarding merger with Williams Manufacturing. Urgent response needed. The words on the screen burned my fingers. I send the invitation twice. And only then did a chilling clarity hit me. This wasn't just a request. It was a letter of surrender. They were admitting defeat. After their failed attempt to acquire Williams Manufacturing, my family was now on their knees begging for a merger. And to do so, they needed the approval of the company's consulting firm. My firm. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Tomorrow they'll walk into my office, confident in their right to dictate terms. And instead of the ghost CEO, they'll see that same secretary, whose ambitions they've trampled into the dirt for decades. Only I won't be standing against the wall with a notepad. I'll be sitting at the head of the desk, and that place will rightfully be mine. Everything all right, dear? Aunt Patricia's voice sounded like the creak of an unoiled door. She caught the shadow on my face, probably mistaking it for annoyance. I drained my glass, feeling the champagne bubbles tickle my throat with anticipation. I gave her a smile that brought a hint of bewilderment to her eyes. Perfect, actually. I just remembered. I have an early meeting tomorrow. I have to go. Oh, are you taking minutes for someone important? Her tone was laced with a sweet, venomous pity. Something like that, I said over my shoulder, already mentally sorting through my wardrobe. Yes, exactly something like that. Only I'll be dictating the protocol. The next morning, I stood in my private elevator, carrying me to the very top. The 48th floor. Above me, only the clouds. My simple black dress had been dry cleaned like a trophy. Now I was wearing a dark blue Chanel suit, tailored to my figure so perfectly, it felt like a second skin. The color of the night before dawn, the color of the depths in which ships sink. My real assistant, Maya, was waiting by the elevator. Her eyes held not the glint of officialdom, but the fire of a comrade in arms. Wilson Ventures arrived early, she quietly reported, keeping pace with me on the silent Corellian floor. Your uncle seems nervous. He's shaking at the thought of meeting that very same CEO of Summit. I'm sure, I replied, catching our reflection in the panoramic glass. Two women who had forged an empire out of thin air and contempt. Who exactly? Uncle Robert, Cousin Ethan, he seemed to insist on legal representation, and Cousin James from the finance department. Your Aunt Patricia is also here for moral support. Maya's lips twitched. And Mr. Harrison from Williams. He looks the calmest of all. My heart pounded, not with fear, but with adrenaline, pure and intoxicating. I remembered Ethan from yesterday, his condescending gaze. He was here to personally handle the details. Excellent. Have they been offered coffee? I asked, stopping at the frosted doors of the conference room. Your aunt expressed dissatisfaction with the lack of support staff. I told her the administrative assistant would be here soon. Maya couldn't help but smile. For 10 years, I'd been invisible to them, a ghost in the hallways of their offices. That same girl with the tray, the one they ignored. Give them 3 more minutes to fidget, I said, placing my hand on the cold steel handle. Then submit our terms. Voices drifted through the thick wood and steel. Uncle Robert's loud, commanding rumble. Aunt Patricia's laughter, sharp as a magpie's chirp. Ethan's confident, club-trained voice, pontificating on strategic prospects. The music of my childhood. Now I conducted the final act. I swung the door open. The sounds cut off, as if a knife had slit a throat. Everything froze. Uncle Robert sat at the head of the table, someone else's table, slouched in his chair like the master of the house. Ethan and James flanked me like devoted squires. Aunt Patricia stood at the window, studying the view of the city she thought belonged to them. Mr. Harrison sat across from me, calm, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his lips. My aunt broke the silence. She didn't even turn her head. Finally, we've been waiting for coffee for 10... Her voice caught in her throat as her gaze slid over me. Her eyebrows rose. Olivia? What kind of masquerade is this? And where, excuse me, is the coffee? I walked leisurely across the room, my heels tapping a precise, commanding rhythm on the parquet floor. I walked around the table and took the chair at the head, directly across from Uncle Robert. I don't serve coffee anymore, Aunt Patricia. Honestly, I never really did. Uncle Robert frowned, his brows knitting into a single, menacing line. What nonsense. Where's the CEO? We've been scheduled to meet with the decision maker. You're meeting with him, I said quietly, so every sound was lost in the deathly silence. I'm the CEO of Summit Solutions, the founder, the owner. I've been that for the past 10 years. You've been asking me about paperwork. The air in the room grew thick and still. Ethan's eyes widened, his hand hovering over the document, holding his expensive pen. James paled. Aunt Patricia's face was a wild mixture of disbelief, horror, and wounded pride. It was more beautiful than I could have imagined. Uncle Robert recovered first. Anger replaced shock. This is nonsense. You're an administrative assistant. No, I retorted, savoring every word. It was a facade, a perfect one, since you, such astute businessmen, never saw what lay behind it. You were so convinced of my insignificance that you went blind. At that moment, as if on cue, Maya entered. She was carrying folders, thick ones with the Summit logo. She silently laid them out in front of each family member, then stood behind my chair, arms folded. My shadow, my shield. These documents, my voice grew stronger, filling the space, describe the terms under which Summit Solutions will consider approving your merger proposal with Williams Manufacturing. Consider? Ethan jumped up, his chair slamming back, his face contorted in a grimace of rage and humiliation. Are you crazy? This is some kind of pathetic, childish revenge. I didn't answer. Instead, I picked up the remote and turned on the screen. Numbers flashed on it. Summit's latest financial statements, the pure, irrefutable mathematics of power. Summit Solutions currently manages assets worth over $122 billion. The voice was cold and precise, like the stroke of a scalpel. Our restructuring success rate is 94%, and according to the contract with Williams Manufacturing, our approval is required for any structural changes, including mergers. I looked from the screen to my uncle's pale face. Does this sound like childish revenge? This sounds like market reality. That can't be true, Aunt Patricia hissed, her voice trembling. She looked at me like a ghost, a nightmare materialized in her ideal world. You're a nobody. You've always been a nobody. That's exactly what you were supposed to think, I nodded, tasting triumph, slow and sweet like fine whiskey. That was your biggest mistake. I turned to Mr. Harrison. His presence here was my greatest asset. Mr. Harrison, would you care to tell my esteemed family why you approached Summit specifically? Mr. Harrison straightened. His gaze was unwavering. When Wilson Ventures launched a hostile takeover attempt, it jeopardized the company and the jobs of hundreds. Summit Solutions didn't just offer a plan. They allowed us to survive and thrive. Our profits have grown 47% since we began working together. Their reputation is one of saviors, not predators. The restructuring plan, James whispered, his face turning the color of ashen paper. He seemed to be contemplating a ghost. The very one that trumped our takeover attempt? Was that you? One of many, I retorted, each syllable falling like a honed stone. I raised my hand, ticking off my fingers. Peterson Electronics, which you tried to break up last year. Maritime Shipping, which you barged into with a low offer last quarter. Davidson Group, which miraculously revived right under your nose before you could swallow it. I leaned forward, resting my palms on the cold table. The glass beneath them trembled slightly. 10 years. For 10 years, I, like a subterranean spring, eroded the foundations of every one of your predatory attacks. I was a worm in the apple of your empire, and you didn't even taste the rot. The blood rushed to Uncle Robert's face, turning it a dangerous crimson. The veins in his neck taut. You deliberately sabotaged the family business? His voice rasped with rage. No, I corrected, my calm ablaze against his storm. I was building my own, one that keeps companies alive, not tearing them apart. And the fact that it stuck in your throat was simply elegant justice. "This is nonsense," Ethan snapped out of his stupor, standing up so abruptly that his chair nearly toppled over. His confidence was crumbling at the seams, and it was obvious. "I'm calling our lawyers. Right now. This is fraud." "Sit down, Ethan." My voice dropped like a guillotine. It held that authority that goes unquestioned. He froze, stunned. "You really should read the documents in front of you, the very ones your firm has been chasing for months, begging for a meeting." I saw understanding slowly and painfully dawn in his eyes, replacing anger with icy horror. "That's right. Your biggest client this year? That's me too." Maya, as if reading my thoughts, stepped forward. She held another sheet of paper, thin yet deadly. "Summary of Summit's current market position and liquid assets." Her voice was clear and merciless. "Please note item 7. We currently have sufficient resources to acquire a controlling stake in Wilson Ventures at market value, if we deem it necessary." Chaos erupted in the room. Aunt Patricia made a strange, choking sound, gasping for air. James frantically shook his phone, trying to verify the irrefutable figures. Ethan simply collapsed in his chair, his proud, hereditary bearing crumbling to dust. He looked broken, really broken. "This is blackmail," Uncle Robert croaked, but his voice no longer held its former power, only an echo of its former strength. "No," I said quietly but clearly, rising. The silhouette in the perfectly tailored jacket cast a long shadow over their confusion. "This is business. The very business in which, as you assured me, I have no voice or place." I adjusted my cuff. "You have until 5 o'clock this evening to accept the merger terms. They are, by the way, quite lenient, considering the circumstances. In case of refusal, Summit will begin purchasing your shares on the open market tomorrow morning. We've already prepared the orders." I took a step toward the door, then turned around. The final chord. "Ah, yes, Aunt Patricia. That champagne you so kindly poured me yesterday? The vineyard that produced it belongs to me, purchased a year ago. And the coffee you were so eagerly awaiting today? This coffee chain is mine too." I allowed my lips to stretch into a smile devoid of any warmth. It turns out my modest salary still allows me to indulge in good taste. The door closed behind me, cutting off the image of their complete, silent collapse. In my office, I leaned against the wall, letting the tremors I'd been suppressing all this time pass through me. It wasn't weakness. It was the release of decades of tension. I looked at the city spread out at my feet and felt not triumph, but a deafening, almost painful silence. A silence after a battle that no one but me knew I was waging. Summit wasn't just a successful company. It was a manifesto, proof, etched into the balance sheets. Maya entered without knocking, carrying 2 cups. The aroma of my coffee, thick and rich, filled the space. "Was it worth it?" she asked, her gaze as sharp as mine. I took the cup, feeling the warmth through the porcelain. 1,000 moments flashed before my eyes. Glances over my head, condescending pats on the shoulder, icy, sweet girl instead of coworker. I remembered the taste of cheap noodles in that first office and the feeling of being considered nothing by the whole world. Every second, I breathed out, my voice finally breaking. Every humiliating, lonely, furious second. The phone on the desk vibrated, dancing with a flood of messages. I saw names: Aunt Patricia, Ethan, James. A hint of panic. I swiped my finger, muting the sound. Let them drown in the silence they had created. Their new reality would be one of awareness. I had an empire to rule. And for the first time in a decade, I didn't have to hide my face. The next 48 hours were a predictable cascade of panic and farce. When a system built on the illusion of superiority collapses, the rubble scatters with a peculiar, pathetic elegance. The messages poured in almost immediately, ranging in tone from indignation to obsequiousness. Aunt Patricia, darling, we need to have a family talk. You know, you've always been like a daughter to me. Olivia, let's not get emotional. We're the same blood. The jokes were lame, I admit. James, you can't do that. We share the same genes, the same roots. I erased them, one by one, without reading them all. My attention was riveted on the other letters, restrained, obsequious, from members of the Wilson Ventures Board of Directors. They weren't sentimental. They saw the numbers. They sensed the shifting of tectonic plates. By noon, they convened an emergency meeting. By 3 o'clock, they voted to accept our terms. Uncle Robert, as expected, resisted to the last. "You betrayed this family," his voice, hoarse with impotent rage, burst into my office as he pushed past Maya, who was trying to stop him. I raised my hand, signaling her to back off. Let her speak. He had no choice. "Actually," I said, not taking my eyes off the screen where the next takeover was being plotted, "I'd say I've learned the lessons of this family. Didn't you teach me? Seize power, destroy the weak, never show your inner self. We gave you everything, the name, the blood." This made me laugh, shortly, harshly, without any joy. "You labeled me, and that label was not enough. My worth was measured by whose background I stood against. So I built my own background, from scratch." I finally looked at him. "By deceiving you, allowing you to live in your own comfortable delusion. You saw what you wanted to see, a quiet, obedient girl knowing her place. That was your failure, not mine." The fight suddenly left him. He slumped down on the visitor's chair, and for the first time in my life, I saw not the patriarch, but simply an aging, frightened man. His breathing was heavy. "Why reveal yourself now?" he whispered. "You could stay in the shadows, own us, without even showing yourself." "Because I'm tired of it," I answered honestly, closing my laptop. "Williams Manufacturing isn't the only one on your hook. Thompson Electronics, Maritime Solutions, at least 3 more. Companies with real people, with good ideas, who just need a hand, not a knife in the back. I'm tired of watching you strangle them." "It's just business," he muttered. But his words no longer held conviction, only an empty, rehearsed refrain. "No," I said quietly. "That was your excuse, and my business is letting them breathe. No, that's greed, and it stops now." My voice was quiet, but there was steel in it. I handed him the folder. Its weight in my hands was insignificant compared to the weight of those years. Final terms of the merger. Summit will acquire a controlling stake in Wilson Ventures. We will rebuild the company, make it a creator, not a devourer. You have a choice. Remain a consultant and accept the new rules, or a golden parachute. The details are on page 3. He took the folder, and his fingers, once so confident, now trembled. The sheets of paper rustled like dry autumn leaves. "You've calculated everything, down to the last comma." "I learned from the best," I said, letting the corners of my lips lift slightly, but there wasn't a hint of warmth in my smile. Although, not in the way you hoped. After he left, more like a flight, Maya brought fresh newspapers. The headlines screamed, and each one was music to the ears. "The secret queen of business, the woman who built an empire in front of everyone's sight. The Wilson clan in shock. Their secretary proved to be a genius." The phone vibrated again. This time, the message was from the only person whose opinion mattered. My mother, who had abandoned that family name and its poison many years ago, wrote short and clear. "I always knew you'd crush them." The next weeks flew by in a whirlwind. The Wilson Ventures board, sensing the opportunity, accepted all the terms with slavish enthusiasm. Their shares soared by 40%. The irony was sweeter than honey. Companies that had once trembled at the mere mention of the Wilsons were now lining up, hoping to partner with Summit. The press went wild. Aunt Patricia, trying to save face, gave an interview in which she pontificated about genius in the family and her unwavering faith in me. In response, I released a clip of a home recording from a previous meeting in which her voice, sweet and venomous, admonished, "Olivia, my dear, accept your fate." The video exploded on social media. After that, her voice fell silent. Ethan tried to wriggle out of it, claiming he was in the know and was very supportive. Alas, there were too many witnesses in that conference room to witness his mute shock. His firm's clients began asking awkward questions. A month later, he was asked to take a sabbatical. James was the quickest to come to his senses. He came with a business proposal, a Wilson Summit alliance to conquer markets. Together, we will be unstoppable, he said over lunch, avoiding my gaze. Summit's goal isn't to be unstoppable, I snapped. It's to give others a chance, to elevate, not to suppress. Real victories came quietly. A young intern tearfully thanking me for proving that it's possible to not lose yourself while rising to the top. Letters from women I'd never met who now found the courage to fight for their ideas. Invitations from business schools to speak not of greed, but of common sense and ethics. 3 months later, I stood on stage holding the Crystal Game-Changing Innovation Award. My mother beamed in the front row. Beside her stood my true allies, those very same administrative assistants whose dedication and intelligence had helped build it all. Success isn't about power, I said into the silent room. It's about what you do with the power you have. For 10 years, I was overlooked. I could have blossomed sooner, but I waited until Summit was strong enough not just to win, but to change the rules themselves. The applause was thunderous, but the real satisfaction came later, in the quiet of the office. Maya entered with the latest news. Uncle Robert had resigned. In the press statement, amid the dry language, there was a paragraph that made me freeze. My niece showed me that true success is measured not by the size of assets you absorb, but by the legacy you leave behind. It's a shame I had to lose control of my brainchild to realize that. I leaned back in my chair. 10 years. Thousands of petty humiliations, sips of cold coffee served with a smile, all-nighters in that tiny office above the restaurant. It all led to here, to this silence, to this freedom. The next family gathering I knew would be on my turf, in that very conference room where I'd once been a servant. I was already mentally choosing my outfit. There was a knock on the door. "Your guests are from Thompson Electronics, Mrs. Wilson, the company your uncle tried to acquire last quarter." I smiled. "Invite them." "And Maya?" "Bring coffee?" She caught my thought, her eyes sparkling. "Exactly. Our very best." As I approached the door, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the glass wall. No more masks. No more pretense. I had built this not in spite of their disdain, but because of it. They taught me the most important thing. True strength doesn't shout. It's patient. It works in silence. Sometimes she looks like a woman in a simple dress, silently serving coffee and writing down orders, while right under everyone's noses, an entire universe grows from her will and patience. For the tabloids, it was revenge. For Forbes, a brilliant strategy. For me, it was simply justice, served cold with a perfectly brewed coffee on a tray. And somewhere there, in that old building, my first desk still stands. I'll never let it be thrown away. It's my starting point, a reminder that greatness doesn't require loud fanfare or recognition. It begins in silence, in a stubborn, unwavering belief in yourself, while the whole world looks the other way. That's the only secret. Not in the strength you demonstrate to the world, but in the strength you hoard within, when all around you lies pitch darkness and no one believes the dawn will come.